Welcome to the Virtual College Exploration for all Illinois students, sponsored by the Illinois Association for College Admissions Counseling and StriveScan. For joining us, a few housekeeping announcements before we get started. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenters at any time. Your camera and microphone are off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. This is just one of many different sessions happening, so be sure to check out the full schedule at IACAC.org. This presentation is being recorded and will be available within about a week at the same website, IACAC.org. I'd now like to turn it over to our presenters tonight.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Sorry, it took me a second to get unmuted there. But welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited that you decided to spend a little bit of your evening with us tonight. I'm very excited also to be with two of my friends to get to talk with you. So this is Truth Be Told, Fact versus Myth in the College Admissions Process, presented by Illinois State University, Knox College, and Illinois Wesleyan. So to tell you a little bit about who is on the Zoom chat with you today, my name is Casey Evans, and I am the Associate Dean of Admissions at Illinois Wesleyan.
Hi everyone, my name is Melissa Ramirez, and I'm an admissions counselor at Illinois State University.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Kimberly Zimmerman, and I am the Director of Recruitment and Outreach at Knox College.
And so I'll go ahead and share with you, as was mentioned, we do have that Q&A section. So we'll probably try to save those for the end. We'll leave some time for that. And if we happen to not get to you, don't worry, they're gonna send us a transcript of the question, so we'll make sure we get to you later if we don't get to you tonight.
We wanted to just give you guys a basic overview of what we're gonna cover today. Just to kind of, so you know what we're going to be going through. So we're going to highlight 3 different parts of the college search process. So kind of starting with that initial search, putting those schools on your list, finalizing your list, figuring out what schools you want to apply to, going through the actual application process, looking at maybe what you should submit to a college, what should be on your application, what you should be paying attention to as you apply to colleges, knowing what colleges are looking for on your application itself. And then once you go through the application process, you get your admission for your colleges that you've applied to, making that final decision and really deciding what college is going to be the college that you ultimately choose to go to, and talking a little bit about that process, as well as about the financial aid component that comes into play during that final decision process as well. So we are going to get started with the initial college search at that point.
Perfect. And so I'll take this section for us. And first off, we wish very much that we could make it a little more interactive. So sorry, everyone. We would have loved to have you voting and everything. So we'll mentally hope that you're voting and cheering for fact versus myth as we're going through these. But for our first fact versus myth, you should know exactly what size and type of school you want before you begin your college visits. So this is something that we hear from time to time. And this very first one is going to kick us off with a myth. So you do not have to know that information up front. Really, the whole purpose of that initial college search is to make that decision. So I think we'd all encourage you to visit different types of schools, different sizes of schools, and just see what feels right. Of course, we'd love for you to be able to see the campus in person, but in some cases we know, especially right now, that's not possible. So visit online, set up some chats with current students, with staff members, with the admissions team, and really get a feel for what type, size of school is going to be a fit for you. So we'll lead off there with our first myth. Next up, you should visit schools and learn more about their financial aid process before you rule them out from their sticker price. That is a fact. So we don't want you to rule a school out based on a sticker price. We all know that sticker prices can sometimes be deceptive. So definitely important to ask about scholarship opportunities. Each school will have a different process for how you can be considered for scholarships. So ask those questions, and also ask about need-based financial aid. So we know a number of you are here in the state of Illinois. Figure out, what are you eligible for from the state government, from the federal government, or from the school, or any sort of local opportunities that you have from your area. Another resource we wanted to make sure to highlight for you is that a lot of schools offer different calculators on their financial aid websites. So often they're called like a net price calculator. That's a good way to get a cost estimate for your specific data. So check out the schools you're interested in, go ahead and run some numbers and kind of just get a feel for, okay, just because the sticker price is one thing, that might not be what specifically you would pay. And again, those are going to be estimates. We always recommend, if it's your dream school, go through the process and see how the financial aid package offers come through. But the big takeaway from this one is just that any college you're thinking about could end up being more affordable than you might think up front. So go ahead and see what your options are and apply for those scholarships as you get the opportunity. So our next one is that you should only look at name brand or well-known schools. This is something I hear a lot when I'm working with students. I think there's certainly schools that we've all heard their names mentioned more than others. So this one is a myth. You don't necessarily need to only look at those that are featured in movies or just kind of mentioned in pop culture. There's a lot of value in all different types of schools, and just because you've heard of a certain name doesn't mean it's more valuable than a certain school that you haven't heard of as much. So I especially hear of this when we're talking about our favorite sports teams. You absolutely can still be a top fan for your favorite sports team and attend a different college. So kind of don't let that rule anything out. It might be your perfect fit school, but there's other options as well that are worth checking out. So as you're looking for that search piece, make sure that you're looking for schools that meet your needs, meet your goals, and kind of keep your options open until you figure out what your needs and goals are when you're going through that initial search process. Next one is that you have to have a college major picked out before narrowing down your search. So this one is going to be a huge myth. Do not fear, do not stress. I think we already put enough pressure on all of you to know exactly what you want out of life at 16 to 18 years old. That's asking a lot. So let this be one less thing on your mind in the college search. Kind of take that stressor off yourself. It's okay to say, I don't know yet. I'm still thinking, I'm still considering. So use that search to kind of get a feel for what are options at the schools. Does anything sound really exciting for you? Is there something you want to hear more about from a faculty member? But more importantly, if you are undecided, ask questions about how they'll help you decide once you get there. So a lot of schools will have different resources to help you choose a major, and just knowing what that process looks like can help you to decide, okay, this is going to be a great fit for me to discover my major as well. And I think a lot of students realize, okay, I thought I wanted to do one thing, and then I got to college and took a few classes and completely fell in love with something I never dreamed of doing. So the running joke is, I think all of us in this room probably never thought we'd work in college admissions. When you're looking at colleges, you don't necessarily know that that's a job. Just so you all know, this is our job. So you can be us one day if you'd like, but that's something that kind of came along the way. We learned about these opportunities and we fit a path to hit our goals. So the same can happen for you. Ask those questions on your visit and really find what's a good fit for you to stick to your four-year graduation plan while doing some exploring for your college major. And then the last one for me is fact versus myth. Your high school counselor is your best resource and support for you as you begin your college search. This one is definitely a fact. So absolutely, if you haven't already met your high school counselor, sometime later this week or next week, go ahead and stop by, set up an appointment with them and just say hello, introduce yourself. They're gonna be a really great resource for you throughout your college search. So if you don't know who they are, they're probably the person that's been emailing you dates and information about college visits, about the FAFSA, about all sorts of different information regarding financial aid and colleges in general. They're gonna be your best friend. So know that you have an expert in your own backyard that can help you with all of your questions and really guide you through the process. And if they need to help you find an answer, they're in touch with all of us. So they're a great collaborator and resource for you, and they'll help you to get in touch with the schools that you're considering. So that is all from me, and I'm going to hand it over to my friend Melissa.
All right, guys. So for this next section of the presentation, I'm going to talk some facts and myths of the application process. So I know that many of you, if you're a senior, obviously you guys have probably started your application process or started at least to consider making a list of the schools you're going to be applying to this fall. And so along with it, there's a lot of pieces that go with that, you know, from collecting all of your materials, like your transcripts, your test scores, if you have them, your admissions essay, a list of your extracurricular activities, and letters of recommendation. Those typically tend to be like the most essential pieces that go with your application process. But there's a lot of statements that over the years working in admissions that I've heard from students that I hope you probably have, you know, the same questions too. So we're gonna go ahead and cover some of those. First statement that I always hear is, my score was the highest at my school. I'll probably get into whatever school I want. That is indeed a myth. So while certainly a strong ACT or SAT test score can help with your admissions process, it's important to remember that it's only one factor out of you as a whole student. And schools tend to look at everything when it comes to the application review process. So yes, while you might have an excellent ACT or SAT test score, know that it's not the only thing that we will be looking at. There's the other pieces that we covered at the beginning. Our next statement, Miss Smith is the coolest teacher in the school. I should ask her for my letter of recommendation. Well, that is also a myth. While you do want to reach out to a teacher or a high school counselor in your school to write your letter of recommendation, you want to make sure that you ask someone who knows you personally and can speak to your academic and personal development. So while Miss Smith might be like the teacher that everybody loves, if she doesn't know who you are as a student or you've never had her class before, she probably isn't the strongest person to ask a letter of recommendation from. So you really want to go ahead and reach out to someone who knows you, who's probably seen a couple of your papers, who's you've been able to hold conversations with, because they can speak to your development as a student overall. So again, that's a very popular a sentence that I've heard. Again, you want to find someone that really knows you. Next statement, I'm only involved in student council, and that is enough for colleges to know how involved I am. And that is definitely a fact. So what this means is that oftentimes I hear students just get a little bit shy because they tell me, well, I'm not very involved. I'm only involved in one thing. And guess what, guys? That one thing is enough, because it tells me as an admissions counselor that the one thing that you guys are doing is something that you're passionate about. And I've had students that can go out for a 15-minute, speech about the one thing that they do, because they're truly involved and invested in that one activity, versus being told that you're involved in this list of 15 things that you have minor interest in. So again, don't fear getting involved in only one thing. We get it. Life is busy. You probably also, helping at home, taking care of, your younger siblings, tutoring, and that is a lot of things to do. So again, don't discount those activities. Maybe you have a part-time job, which is why you can't, get involved in extracurricular activities. That one thing is definitely going to say a lot about you because you're passionate about it. My next statement, be modest when writing your college application essay. That's a myth. This is your time to brag about yourself. In your college admissions essay, honestly, this is the one piece that you have to tell us about yourself. Everything that you've done thus far, all your progress, you have an opportunity to tell us about it. And sometimes we won't really hear from you guys. We probably won't ever be on a phone call, but the only time we're going to be able to hear your voice is through this essay. So you definitely want to give yourself some time to write it out, really think about what message you want to write in those essays. But again, brag about yourself. Tell us who you are. Tell us if you've had challenges and how you've been able to overcome those challenges. So definitely give yourselves an opportunity to brag in those college essays. This one's one of my favorites. Senior year doesn't matter. I got admitted already, so I can just take it easy. No, that is in fact a myth. While it is true that when you guys apply to college admissions, typically you guys tend to show us your freshman through junior grades, senior year still matters. Know that in most cases, admissions to your college is conditional, meaning that upon you submitting your final transcripts, if we see that you completely tanked senior year, your admissions decision can be rescinded, simply due to the fact that your grades significantly dropped that last semester. So again, you really want to give yourselves that extra last push to do well in your classes. You want to put in the effort, because again, we can take those decisions back if we see that you just completely tanked that final year. So no, you're not done until you officially graduate, okay? Test optional means that I have the option to submit my test scores. And this is a fact. So again, I know that right now, especially due to COVID-19, we recognize that a lot of institutions have decided to go test optional with their application processes. And this really does mean test optional. And no, it does not mean quote unquote optional. It really does mean optional. So what that means is that as students, if you do have a test score, if you were one of the students who got to take it a year before, or you got the test before a lot of the testing centers got closed, and you have a test score, it is entirely up to you to submit those test scores. You do not need to submit them because you feel the pressure by the institutions to submit them. If you have any questions about whether your score is good enough or not, I would have that conversation with your high school counselor, and maybe they can guide you to make that decision if you should submit them. But again, from us, and I know Casey and Kimberly can say the same thing, it really does come down to you if you want to submit them. There is no pressure from us as admissions counselors for you to submit those test scores. Similarly, there's no pressure from us to ask of you guys to take the exam. So I know we've had conversations, students are looking at out of state to go take the exam and stuff like that. Know that from us, there is absolutely no need to do that. If the school says they are test optional, they are truly test optional. All right, you can get into the college you've always dreamed of. That is indeed a fact. And by that, I mean a couple things actually. So maybe as an incoming freshman, you did not get admitted to your dream school. Guess what? There is still the opportunity for you to make that possible. In many cases, I tell students to consider the transfer option. So maybe you were looking at school X, you really wanted to go to X university and you didn't get in as an incoming freshman. Well, you might consider looking at the transfer option. Maybe considering going to community college first and then transferring to your dream school. Again, there's always an opportunity to be admitted. It's not the end of the road if you didn't get admitted as an incoming freshman. Certainly keep your options open. But again, I always like to remind students to consider that transfer option. It is always going to be there for you guys. Okay. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed some of the application process. Now we're going to turn it over to Kimberly.
So we talked about kind of that initial college search, the actual act of applying to colleges. And so I'm going to talk to you about some facts versus myths in the final decision. So you've been admitted to your schools, it's late spring of your senior year, you're trying to figure out what school you want to attend for college. And some things that, kind of go in and out of people's heads when they're making that college decision. So the first statement is you should go to the most prestigious college that you were admitted to, and that is in fact a myth. So you should go honestly to the college that fits you the best. I mean, if that ends up being a prestigious college, that's fine, that's great. Fit really has to do with how you feel when you're on campus, when you're interacting with the current students on campus, how that school matches to your own learning styles and how the professors teach. and also considering the experiences that are going to be available to you at that institution, at that college that you were admitted to. Because ultimately, if a college isn't a good match for you, you're going to be unhappy and you're not going to enjoy your 4 years, regardless of how prestigious that college is. And this also goes back to what Casey was talking about in her college search process with those name brand schools. I think it kind of fits into that same mentality. You really have to take that initial name out of it and your initial preconceived notions of the college out of it, and really think about how you're going to feel and how you're going to learn in that environment, and what is important to you in a college, and factor that in terms of fit and what your college experience is going to be, as opposed to, well, everyone's going to be so impressed with me if I go to, you know, college X. The next statement, there is only one perfect college out there for me. And that actually is also a myth. We're picking a college. It's not necessarily, you know, a soulmate, your perfect match. There's not just one out there for you and you have to find it throughout the thousands of colleges that are in the country, in the world. There are probably a lot of colleges that are going to be a good fit for the same person. It's just a lot of outside factors and a lot of deciding what's important to you in a college. And it could be something as simple as a college on the East Coast versus a college in the Midwest are very similar, but you just don't feel comfortable getting on a plane and flying to the East Coast. You want to be able to drive home on weekends and visit your family. So college in the Midwest is going to be a better fit for you. So that's kind of why I encourage you to read as much as you can about each college, attend virtual events, visit the colleges in person if you are able to, and really explore what opportunities are waiting for you at each school that you were admitted to, and kind of decide for yourself on a school where you think you'll be supported, where you think you will learn the best, where you think you will be happy. And at the end of the day, I mean, you kind of just have to be you know, confident in your own decision and confident in your decision as a person and the decision you made maybe alongside your family about what's going to be the best for you. And this also could incorporate things like financial aid, things like distance, things like your major. Maybe there's a professor you really clicked with that you had a conversation with. I mean, any number of these reasons are good reasons to choose a college. So you don't have to find that one school in the mix of every other school. You just have to find a school that you really truly believe you're going to be happy and you're going to be successful at for those next 4 years. The next statement, the college that admitted you first wants you the most. So that's where you should go. And this is actually one that I got tripped up in a little bit myself when I was going through the college admission process. There was a school that admitted me like 2 weeks after I applied. And I genuinely was wondering if I needed to go to that school because I had applied to all these schools at the same time and one got back to me so quickly. So I thought, wow, they must really be impressed with me. They must really want me on their campus. I should probably go there. And I ultimately did not end up going to that school. But also this statement itself is in fact a myth. So I think it's important to note, and now that I'm on the admission side, I definitely understand this. Colleges really do have their own timelines. Admissions offices really do have their own timelines and their own processes for application review that are going to look nothing like another college. I mean, I know Knox and Illinois Wesleyan and Illinois State all have different reviewing timelines and processes for application review. So if you apply to all 3 of our schools, you're probably going to find out all different times if you're admitted to our institutions. So what I'm meaning to say is that how quick or long the review process takes might have nothing to do with you individually as an applicant. It might have everything to do with what our timelines are internally and when we start reviewing applications for admissions, or when we start, you know, feeling like we can really sit down and go through interviews or go through notes or meet with students. Maybe we're waiting until after a fall admission day where we know we're going to have a lot of interviews and students on campus. There could be a number of different reasons for why we're admitting students right away or waiting till, you know, Thanksgiving to send out admission letters, or, you know, somewhere in between that as well. My next statement, you cannot trust the college about financial aid. And that is also a myth. So, I mean, I think it's really important to note that admission and financial aid counselors really are here to assist you as the student throughout the entire college application and decision process. This does include financial aid. We know and recognize that financial aid can be a huge factor in the college decision process. And likely we've been trained and have received extensive training about financial aid at our respective institutions. And we as admission counselors would be happy to talk you through your financial aid packages, as well as answer any questions or concerns you would have. And if we can't answer all your questions, connect you to the right person on campus, maybe that's in the financial aid office, that could answer the question. So, I mean, we go through, like I say, extensive training, and we want to help families understand what the financial aid opportunities are, what their financial aid package is at our institution, exactly how much money they might have to pay should they choose to enroll, and really talk that through with families and make sure that that is a right fit, that that is something they're comfortable with, that that is something that they feel good about in terms of their financial aid and scholarship. Also on the application side, we'll talk to students about scholarship opportunities, either at our individual institutions, or if we have outside resources for scholarship. So in addition to the college counseling offices, which have a lot of scholarship and financial aid information to provide to their students too, don't forget about the colleges themselves as being a resource to really assist you through this financial aid piece. Everything from the FAFSA all the way through the college decision, when you're really figuring out how much money you can afford as a family to pay for that college. And my last one, I have plenty of time to make my college decision after I have been admitted. And this is indeed a fact. So I think it's important to note that colleges really do have different deadlines for depositing and making your decision, depending on the way you applied. Say you're applying early decision, many times that's a binding decision, and you're saying, if I am admitted to this college and my financial aid looks good, I will go to that school. So in that case, you might have a smaller window in which you have to let that college know that you're going to be attending. And as opposed to applying regular decision, or a college that has a rolling admission decision. So I think the best thing to do is look on the website, as well as ask your admission counselor at each individual school that you are admitted to, or even that you're applying to, the deadlines for admission, as well as the deadlines for housing. So when I say deadlines, I mean like admission deposits as well as housing deposits if you wanted to live on campus. I do want to note that the most common deadline is the national decision deadline of May 1, but there will be schools that will have maybe incentives to deposit earlier, or the housing deadline is, can be submitted as early as December. There's a lot of schools with a lot of different deadlines. Like I said, the most common is May 1, but definitely ask your admission counselor or dig around on the website and see if you can find that information for yourself, so you know when the deposit and the housing deadlines are. I do also want to emphasize that you absolutely should not feel pressured into making your college decision before you are ready. I mean, this is a really big decision. This impacts your next 4 years, ultimately the rest of your life. There's a lot of things that come into this decision. There's a lot of factors that need to be considered and thought about deliberately. So I want to make sure that you guys don't feel pressured in any way to make your college decision before you are absolutely ready and are absolutely certain. And on the admission side, we know that you guys have a lot to consider. So we know if we're calling you or sending you an email, checking in and saying, hey, where are you at with your college search process? Have you narrowed it down? If you say, no, I really haven't, I need more time, that's an answer that we get all the time, that we almost expect to get from students a lot of the time. We know it takes you guys, and we want it to take you guys a while to dig through and research and attend events and visit campus, and talk to current students and faculty members and do all these things that give you a good idea of what that college is going to be like for you. And we recognize and know that takes time. So we don't want students to feel like the second they get that admission letter in the mail that they have to then turn around and know immediately if they're going to be going to that school or not. You have really this entire year to continue to explore, talk to your guidance counselors, talk to your families, talk to other people that you know have attended colleges, talk to the colleges and the admissions officers themselves. And we're all here to really support you through this entire college process from beginning to end. And we really, we really want to make sure that when you make that decision, ultimately you're excited and you're happy and you're confident that it is the best fit for you. And with that, that is all of our slides. So we can definitely turn it over to the Q&A now. So I see we have some questions that have come in. So we're gonna start with those, but if anyone still wants to type a question in or ask us a question, just use that Q&A feature at the bottom and we will start answering those for you.
Awesome. So I'll take the first question, and thank you all for sending these in. These look really great. These are great questions. So the first question is, when should we start to apply for scholarships? So I really think definitely work with your school. You'll find that some of the scholarships from locally in your town, they might be available to apply for junior year is usually the earliest I've seen on those. So definitely ask for those local level scholarships when those open up and how early you can apply. Occasionally there might be like a scholarship contest you can do when you're a little bit younger, but those would be the most varied. For the most part, anything through the individual schools, you're gonna wait until you apply to the school to apply for those scholarships. Again, ask the individual school about their process. Some might automatically consider you, some might have a website where you can search for those, but for the most part, I would work on those senior year as you're applying to the colleges. And really that should give you kind of plenty of time to go through that process. So that's a great question.
Our next question is asking, how many letters of recommendation should we have? And I would say that that is dependent on the number of letters that are asked per school. So for example, at Illinois State, we don't ask for any letters of recommendation, and we would actually prefer that you don't submit any letters of recommendation because that is our policy. Just for other institutions, I know I've seen anywhere from 2 to 3 letters of recommendation is what typically schools are asking for. So at least identify 2 individuals that you would feel comfortable reaching out to for them to have your letters of recommendation. But again, pay attention to the admissions requirements of each institution you're applying to. So again, for ISU, we wouldn't even look at them. So again, just kind of take that into consideration. That's definitely going to be important.
I think that's a great thing to kind of ask each college as you're filling out these applications what we should do in terms of letters of rec or additional essays or any of those kind of supplemental pieces of the application, because for some schools those are going to be really important and other schools they may not consider them at all. So it's always good to know kind of ahead of time what effort you're putting in and if that's going to be worth it in the end. The next question, when naming extracurriculars, should it only be things in that past year or your whole high school career? I mean, you can put every activity that you've been involved in from freshman year through senior year. In fact, most applications, it'll have you list how many years that you've been involved in that, even something as detailed as how many hours a week you're involved in it. So going back to what we were talking about with student council, if that's the one thing you're involved in, you can explain that that really does take a lot of your time up and you are very involved and you've been it for 4 years and now you're an officer. I mean, all of that can kind of show us who you are as a student and the different leadership components and things that you've gained from those extracurricular activities. I know I've also seen students put additional volunteer work that they've done outside of high school. So if you volunteer at a church or a local community center or something along those lines outside of those school extracurriculars, there's oftentimes space on the application to list those opportunities as well, because all that gives us a little bit better picture of who you are, what you're passionate about, and like I said, what kind of leadership opportunities you've taken advantage of for yourself throughout those 4 years.
So next question, if your test score isn't amazing but also isn't bad, is it better to submit it or not submit it? So really, this is where that counselor that we mentioned is going to be a great resource for you. They're familiar with most of the colleges, especially if you're here in state in Illinois. They're going to be familiar with a lot of the Illinois schools, but a lot of other schools as well. So kind of talk with them and get an idea of where you fall within that school's profile. Does your score fall right within their middle range of who's accepted, or is it going to be maybe a little above or a little below the range? And that can help you decide if it's worth submitting. So if you and your counselor are at all worried that it might not be a good thing, again, with those test optionals, just don't submit it. That's okay. Follow their test optional process instead. If you think, hey, this is going to look really great for this school, you know, I think I'm right within their main profile or maybe even a little above, then that's awesome. Feel free to submit that. And then you don't need to go through the test optional process, whatever it is. So definitely utilize that resource of your counselor, and do some research as well about the specific schools you're applying to. So you might decide to submit it to school A, but not submit to school B, and that's okay. You're just kind of looking at what's the right fit for you as you're going through that process.
So for our next question, when should a junior start studying for the SAT or ACT? Now, honestly, I know traditionally juniors are the ones that take the Illinois students in Illinois take their exam in junior year. So if the students have an opportunity to start studying for the exam, I would say now would be the perfect time. Some schools do provide resources through their college and career centers. Maybe there's like a specific book that you're interested in taking. I know there's a lot of online practice exams specifically through their websites, through the SAT College Board or ACT website. There's a lot of different resources and sample exams. So definitely consider studying for it now if that is going to be your goal to ultimately be able to take the exam.
So the next question, how do applications compare when they do submit the test scores? So versus someone who chooses to be test optional and not submit the test score versus someone who is submitting their SAT or ACT scores. I always like to think of this like almost like a pie graph. And there's a number of different components that colleges look at when they review a student for admission. So if the test scores are in there, that's a piece of the pie. If you take the test scores out, all those other pieces of the pie just get a little bit bigger and they kind of fill the gap. So if you're not submitting test scores, we're going to look at here at my institution, we're going to look at your transcript a little more closely. We're going to consider that a little more heavily because that's one less piece of information that we have to rely on. So as opposed to having, you know, an interview, a transcript, and a test score, we have in the application materials and the letters of rec, we don't have the test scores. So we consider everything else a little bit more seriously when we review students for admission. I think the other thing to keep in mind, there are schools that are new to being test optional this year, and there are schools that have been test optional for a number of years. There are schools that have been test optional for decades. So definitely make sure that you're reaching out and asking how long that school has been test optional, because schools that have been test optional for years and years and years, it's a well-oiled machine for them. So that's one less thing that you have to even consider or even remotely worry about. And other schools that recently went test optional, they went test optional because they figured out the strategy of how they're going to accurately review students for admission and be confident in that. And they came up with this really great plan. So they're going to have this plan at the forefront that they're going to have readily available to share with you. And developing that plan was the reason they were confident to go test optional as an institution. So I think both ends, I think it's important to kind of get that story from the college themselves. So you can really decide if submitting your test scores or not submitting your test scores this year especially is going to be a good choice for you.
So will this PowerPoint or recording be posted anywhere? If so, where can I find it? So StriveScan is going to send out information following this presentation, essentially back to that StriveScan website where you registered is where the recordings will be posted, I believe up to a week later. So if you want to watch this again or share it with a friend, we'd love that. Definitely share that. Thanks.
So the next question is, how many colleges should we apply to? General rule of thumb, I would say about 5 or 6 is a good, healthy number of schools, specifically those schools that you've done your research on, you've had an opportunity to at least talk to an admissions counselor or even visit the campus. You want to apply at about 4 to 6. I know that when I was going through the application process, I applied to, I think it was like 15 schools, but keep in mind that most schools have an application fee, so that can get a little bit expensive, and some schools do not accept fee waivers, some do. So definitely keep an eye on what the application policy is per school, and just kind of keep in mind some of them might have costs associated with them, so it can get a little expensive, but I think 5 or 6 is like a good, healthy number of schools to apply to. You also don't want to get let it get too overwhelming, because that's a lot of essays. Many schools have supplemental essays, and so then you're looking at writing a couple more than just your personal statement. So I think 5 to 6 is a good number.
I applied to 4.5 colleges, meaning I started my fifth and I never quite finished it. So I always like to say that's my personal number, is the 4.5 for colleges. The next question, are any scholarships based on test scores? So if you don't submit those scores, then you won't be able to qualify for those scholarships. I mean, I think this is going to depend on institution and depend on maybe individual outside scholarships. There very well might be some scholarships out there either at individual colleges or at, you know, community-based organizations or private organizations that have scholarships where test scores are a component and test scores will remain a component. But I mean, I think the schools that are going test optional, the colleges that are going test optional, they're going test optional with the understanding that the students are still going to be able to earn that scholarship, and that scholarships based on their other academic factors. So based on their transcripts, based on class rank, if class rank's even included on your transcript. That is another thing that's included sometimes for students and not for others. Based on your extracurriculars, your letters of rec, your essays, all the supplemental information that you submit. So a number of honors and AP classes that you're taking. There's so many other things that scholarships can also be impacted by, and other pieces of the application that are taken into consideration when evaluating a student for scholarship. I know my institution has a separate scholarship essay where we ask students flat out, why do you feel you're deserving of merit-based scholarships? And we factor that in. So there's a lot. So I encourage you to reach out to or look on the financial aid sections of the websites of the colleges you're applying to, or reach out to your admission counselor and ask what is considered in the scholarship review process, and would it be detrimental if I did not submit my test score? So you can get right to the source and really understand how that might look different in each institution.
Perfect. So I'll answer one more question. I know that means 3 of you we won't get to. So Melissa, Kim, and I will get these questions sent to us, and we will collaborate and get you the best answer possible and send that out to you. But last question we'll answer live is, what does the early decision application mean? So as you're looking at different applications, you might hear the phrase early decision, early action, regular decision, or rolling decision. So early decision specifically would be a school that has a process that allows you to apply only to them. So you would only apply to one school early decision. And you are saying, if I get accepted to this school, no matter what else happens, I 100% will go to this school. So if you get accepted to your early decision school, you are required to withdraw all your other applications and agree to go to that school. So that's going to be a great choice for you if you're like, yes, no matter what else happens, this is the school for me, I already know it. Early action, so kind of some people get those confused. The early action ones are going to be non-binding. Those generally mean that you will get an answer sooner in your process. So they will review those applications earlier than those that apply regular decision or rolling. So regular decision and rolling, you'll kind of get the answer just as soon as the schools can get to those, either after the deadline in the case of regular decision, or pretty much right away in the case of rolling decision. So hopefully that helps with that. But I want to make sure, since we have just 2 minutes left, that we get the chance, definitely jot down or take a picture of our contact information. We've also listed for you a form you can fill out if you want more information from any of our specific schools. And then we wanted to be sure to tell you where you can find us next. So all 3 of our institutions will be doing individual sessions. For Illinois Wesleyan specifically, you can find us individually on October 21st at 5:30 p.m. So would love to have you come see us.
And Illinois State, my colleague will be presenting on September 23rd at 6:30 p.m. So just next week.
And then Knox College is going to be on October 6th at 6:30. And a colleague of mine will be presenting there, so you can meet another one of us virtually.
But awesome, that is all that we had for you today. So again, jot down our info as we close. Thank you so, so much. And those last three we didn't get to, I promise we will get you an answer as soon as your question is emailed to us. So we will get back to you. But thank you so much for spending your evening with us. We really enjoyed getting to talk with you and hear your questions.
Thank you for joining us. When you close this window, there will be a link and a very quick 4-question survey that we would appreciate if you have any feedback that you provide us tonight. Also, this will be just a mini sessions that's coming up and we will be hosting, so be sure to sign up for additional sessions at IACAC.org. In about a week, you'll be able to find this session's recording as well as all of the other sessions recordings at IACAC.org. Thank you again. Great job, presenters.